20 years ago, I got a Game Boy Advance and a copy of Pokemon Sapphire for Christmas. It was my gateway into RPGs, and after a little over a year, had me wanting a GameCube to play Pokemon Colosseum. The GameCube ended up introducing me to the wider world of Nintendo with games like Mario Kart Double Dash and Super Mario Sunshine. Ultimately, even though I dipped in and out of interest towards Pokemon over the years following, I never really missed a core entry in the series. In late 2023, while waiting for the second half of the DLC for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, I decided to make the final push to upgrade my collection Pokemon in Pokemon Home from what the community calls a living dex to a living form dex. The term living dex refers to a collection of one of every single species of Pokemon. As for a living form dex, it's the same thing, except it also includes every single alternate form possible for each Pokemon, regional forms, gender differences, and so on. When I finally finished it, I was just getting into the swing of things with streaming on Twitch. I'd been mostly experimenting with a variety of games, but felt like I needed to find a specific focus in order to start building an audience rather than losing viewers every time I played a new game. Since I'd been playing so much Pokemon off stream, I decided that it could potentially be my new focus given my 20 plus years of history with it. With that in mind, I decided I'd go back to the very first game I played in the series, Pokemon Sapphire. The question, however, was what would my content focus be? I'm not a competitive battler by any stretch of the imagination. I'd be lucky if I could remember most of the type matchups. As a big collector in general, it seemed natural that my focus should be on collecting. So I decided that my first goal would be to complete the 3rd generation's National Pokedex. Completing the National Pokedex is for sure a difficult challenge in every generation, but the 3rd generation was built different. For starters, Ruby and Sapphire were a completely blank slate with no compatibility with prior games, and they only had access to 200 of the total 386 Pokemon at the time. The rest would not become available without either a new game releasing or an event distribution which few had access to. To get every Pokemon excluding event exclusives, it would take up to 7 games to catch them all. 5 Game Boy Advance games and 2 GameCube games, 2 Game Boy Advance systems and a GameCube, as well as all of the required cables. To top it off, you could also get one of the mythical Pokemon depending on your region. In Japan, you could get Celebi with the Colosseum bonus disc, while in North America you could get Jirachi. In Europe, we didn't get a bonus disc, instead they had us play through Pokemon Channel to get Jirachi as a reward. At that point, it would be possible to get 383 of 386, just 3 event Pokemon missing. Unfortunately, even if you were willing to get a GameCube from Japan to get Celebi, you'd still be missing Mew and Deoxys. Since these events are lost to time, the main way to obtain them now is through illegitimate means. As I wanted to complete the Pokedex only using what would have been available to me 20 years ago, I decided I'd leave out Mew, Celebi and Deoxys. I thought about whether I should set any rules, and decided early on to attempt to catch everything in a regular Pokeball to add some challenge. With that in mind, I set my goal to obtain 383 out of 386, started up my first stream and got to work. As I'd eventually be playing Ruby and Emerald, there was no need to restart the game to obtain all 3 starters, so I picked the same starter I picked 20 years ago, Torchic. The early routes were entirely straightforward, catching everything that lurked within the tall grass with the exception of Surskit on Route 102. As it had a 1% chance to be encountered, I chose to leave it until later to avoid losing momentum so early on. By the time I'd reached Rustboro City, I had caught a total of 10 Pokemon. Route 116 was home to Skitty, which had a 2% chance to be encountered. I was still trying to maintain a certain pace, so again decided to leave it until later, but made sure to pick up everything else I needed in the area. I headed to the first gym, evolved Lotad and beat Roxanne effortlessly. After progressing through some story, I was able to head to Dewford town on Mr. Briney's boat. I went straight into Granite Cave to train up my team and tried to catch as much as I could in the meantime. After dealing with multiple Abra escaping with Teleport, I decided to leave it until I had the means to prevent escape. Since Rock Smash wasn't available yet, I also had to leave Nosepass until later. After leveling up a bit, I cleared the gym and gained access to Flash so I could finally reach Steven and Granite Cave to progress the story and head to Slateport. Before heading into the town, I battled some trainers on the beach and my Torchic evolved into Combusken. At this point, the total was at 18 and it felt like I was making some good progress. Heading into Slateport, the Team Aqua plot felt like it finally started after meeting Archie in the museum. The only other important thing here was to pick up the Pokeblock case in the contest hall, which would be essential later on. Since there was nothing else to do here, I continued on to Route 110. While catching everything new here, I realised I somehow hadn't caught a Wingull yet, so made sure to catch one. After beating May and reaching Mauville City, I went straight into Route 117 and caught everything I could there, bringing my total to 27. I headed back to Mauville and completely destroyed Wally's Ralts, but failed miserably after reaching Watson inside the gym. I trained up my team a bit and evolved Slakoth into Vigoroth, which gave me the edge I needed to be Watson and gain access to Rock Smash. I was now able to break the rocks blocking the road north of Mauville and caught everything I could through Route 112 and Fiery Path. I did, however, decide to leave Coughing until later as it only had a 1% encounter rate in Sapphire. On my way through Route 113, I caught a few more Pokemon and brought my total to 36 as I reached Fall Arbor Town. Along Route 114, I made sure to catch the version exclusive Seviper, but I also ran out of Pokeballs. I decided to press on and entered Meteor Falls, where both Team Aqua and Team Magma made an appearance. Afterwards, I made sure to take the path down to Rustboro and picked up more Pokeballs. I then took the long way back round to the cable car by Fiery Path. After reaching the top of Mount Chimney, I fought my way to Archie, but was a little underprepared for his team. While leveling a bit, I caught a Geodude and also evolved Ralts. Round 2 with Archie was no trouble, so I hopped down Jagged Pass where I caught a Spoink and reached Lavaridge Town. By the Pokemon Center, there was an old lady that gave me an egg which hatched into Wynot, bringing my total to 41. As I wasn't ready for the gym, I looped back around to catch Swablu and Lunatone now that I had some Pokeballs and leveled up a bit along the way. After beating Flannery, May gave me the Go Goggles so I could finally enter the desert. In the desert, you're given the choice of the Root Fossil and Claw Fossil. Once you choose one, the other sinks into the sand. I chose the Claw Fossil for this playthrough, meaning I'd have to get the Root Fossil and Ruby. I caught a couple of Pokemon in the desert and headed back to Rustboro so I could have the Claw Fossil revived into Anorith. After evolving Combuskin into Blaziken, I breezed through the Petalburg gym and picked up Surf from Wally's father. I took the opportunity to quickly catch Pelipper and Tentacool on some of the nearby bodies of water. After getting back to Mauville, Watson was waiting in the middle of town to give me the key to New Mauville so that I could shut down the generator. After arriving there, I was able to catch a Magnemite and Voltorb, bringing my total to 51. Once I'd shut off the generator, I crossed the water east of Mauville to make my way to the next town. Along the way, I caught a handful of Pokemon before arriving at the Weather Institute, which was overrun with members of Team Aqua. After beating them all to rescue the scientists, I was given Cast Form for helping them. As Fortree Gym was blocked off by unseen forces, I headed out to Route 120 where I caught Absol and met Steven again. He gave me the Devon Scope, which revealed the invisible roadblocks to be Kecleon. After catching it, I spent a while in the area searching for Surskit. Despite its 1% encounter rate, it felt like I searched for far longer than I should have, but I still managed to obtain one. Since I had 2 rare candies taking up space in my bag, I used one each on Oddish and Marill to evolve them as they were both high enough level to evolve. This brought my total to 60. Next I went to Fortree Gym and beat Winona without any trouble, gaining access to Fly. I realised I'd totally forgotten to collect any fishing rods along the way, so I flew back to Dewford for the old rod and used it to catch a Magikarp. I then returned to Route 118 and collected the good rod from a fisherman and used it to catch Carvana. After rushing through Route 120 to Route 121, Magnemite evolved into Magneton and I also made sure to catch Shuppet. Just a little further down the route, I finally arrived at the Safari Zone. This was where I made my first compromise on the Pokeball rule for the sake of simplicity, as Pokemon here could only be caught in Safari Balls. After catching a whopping 10 Pokemon, I had caught everything I could as I hadn't brought the Acrobike with me to access the final area, so I left with my total reaching 74. Once I'd reached Lilycove and beat May for the last time, the path to Mossdeep was blocked by multiple Wailmer, so my next stop would be Mount Pyre. On my way there, I caught Wailmer. There wasn't much to do here besides getting the blue orb after Archie stole the red orb, but there was a small handful of Pokemon to catch, with the main highlight being the incredibly elusive Chimecho. With only a 1% chance to be encountered, it took a good while to find one before heading back to Lilycove, bringing my total to 80. Next was the Aqua Hideout, where I made sure to pick up the Master Ball and catch Electrode. After finishing with the hideout, the Wailmer had left, so I was able to head to Mossdeep. While challenging the gym, Curlier evolved into Gardevoir. Over in Steven's house, he gave me the HM Dive, which I used to explore the deep sea south of the city, where I found a cave underwater. Inside the cave, I caught a Golbat and found Archie, who awakened Kyogre with the red orb. He wasn't able to control it, and instead Kyogre started an endless torrential downpour. On the way to Sootopolis, the underwater area surrounding it had patches of seaweed where I caught a few Pokemon, the most important one being Relicanth, which will be essential later in the game. Inside the city, I went straight to the Cave of Origin. On my way through the cave, I made sure to pick up the HM Waterfall. Kyogre ended up being a huge challenge to catch, especially with a regular Pokeball, but after several resets, I finally caught it. Now that the world-threatening catastrophe was averted, the Sootopolis gym finally opened back up, so I was able to obtain the final gym badge. Before heading to the Pokemon League, I wanted to evolve some of my Pokemon first. There's a man on an island just outside of Mossdeep City who trades coloured shards for evolution stones. Once I'd obtained one of each colour, I traded them for their respective stones, allowing me to evolve Lombre, Gloom, Pikachu and Vulpix. With that out of the way, I headed straight to Evergrande City. Before heading into Victory Road, I did a bit of fishing and caught Lovedisc and Corsola. Victory Road was home to many higher level evolved Pokemon, which meant I could save a bit of time later level grinding. With that in mind, I made sure to catch everything I needed. Before I could leave Victory Road, Wally turned up for one last battle, but while his team had definitely improved from a single Ralt, it was no trouble for my team, so I was able to head on to the Pokemon League. After a good start, sadly my team began to struggle at the second member of the Elite Four, so I put it on hold to go and catch some Pokemon. Now that I had Wynaught with the ability Shadow Tag, which prevents Pokemon from escaping, I went back to Granite Cave and caught Abra. As I also had Rock Smash now, I went to the bottom floor of the cave and caught Nosepass, which brought my total to 100. On Route 116, I spent some time searching, but finally caught Skitty, and in Fiery Path, I caught a Coughing. On Route 117, I fished up a Corphish, which, after using a single rare candy on it, evolved into Crawdaunt. In the desert on Route 111, I caught Baltoy. One area I'd managed to miss up to this point was an area in the far north of Route 115, which you can only access with Surf. It just happens that this is the only place in the game where you can find Jigglypuff. After catching one, I also made sure to catch Swallow to save some time later on. Next, I swapped my Mac bike for an Acro bike and went back to the Safari Zone to catch the last few Pokemon in Area 4. Afterwards, I travelled over to Shoal Cave just north of Mossdeep City. This cave is unique as it's heavily affected by the time of day. Between 9 and 3 the cave is in high tide, and between 3 and 9 the cave is in low tide. Fortunately, even though my battery was dead, meaning the time would not progress on my cartridge, I'd set the time so that the cave would be in low tide. This was important as low tide is the only way to access the icy section in the depths of the cave, which is the only place you can catch Snorunt. I made sure to catch one as well as a Spheal. In the hardest to reach area of Meteor Falls, I caught Bagon. While fishing on Route 134 near Slateport, I caught Horsey and Sharpedo, and on Lilycove Beach, I caught Staryu. After realising I'd forgotten to pick up the XP share, I picked it up from the Devon Corporation and decided to work on the level grinding for some of the evolutions I needed. After 10 evolutions, this brought my total to 126. Before stopping, I also made sure to level up and evolve an Incada. This one's a bit unique, as if you have an empty slot in your party when it evolves, it becomes 2 Pokemon, Ninjask and Shedinja. As I'd acquired a Sunstone and a Moonstone through the game, I used them to evolve Gloom into Belossom and Skitty into Delcatty respectively. I'd also leveled up my team a bit in the process, allowing me to quickly clear the Elite Four and Champion with no problems. After beating the Elite Four, you'll return to your house where you'll see a news report on the TV downstairs where they announce that an unidentified flying Pokemon has been seen in various locations of the region. If you were playing Ruby, this would be Latios, and in Sapphire, it's Latias. Before going to catch Latias, I decided I'd clear up some other loose ends first. I chipped away at the level up evolution some more, evolving another 5 Pokemon. Instead of leveling up Wailmer like a sensible person, I wanted to catch a wild Wailord. So I spent far too long surfing around on Route 129 trying to find one, as it only had a 1% chance to be encountered. Once I finally caught one, I went back to Steven's house in Mossdeep City where he'd left me a Beldum as a gift. As I had a spare water stone, I evolved Staryu into Starmie. On the water route east of Dewford, you'll find the abandoned ship. While there, you'll eventually find an area accessed through a submerged part of the ship where there's several locked doors. Once I'd managed to unlock all the doors, I found the scanner in the final room. In Slateport, I was able to exchange it for the Deep Sea Tooth or the Deep Sea Scale. The held items needed to evolve Clamperl. I chose the Deep Sea Tooth this time, leaving the other to obtain in Ruby. At this point, I realised I'd already obtained everything I needed to unlock the 3 Reggies. To do so, you need Relicanth and Wailord, as well as the TM Dig and the HM's Surf and Dive. In the strong currents west of Pacific Log Town, once you reach this dark patch of water, you need to use Dive. Eventually, you'll find this braille tablet on the wall telling you to go up here. You'll find yourself in a large cave which contains the braille alphabet, as well as a tablet on the wall at the top of the room which tells you to dig here. This opens a door to a second chamber with more braille tablets, the most important one being the one at the end which says first comes Relicanth, last comes Wailord. As long as you have Relicanth in the first slot of your party and Wailord in the last slot, once you interact with the tablet, the room shakes and you hear what sounds like a door opening. The doors to the 3 caves containing the Reggies will now be open. I first went to the desert ruins on Route 111. In this cave there's braille that tells you right, down, then use strength. If you follow these instructions, the door will open. Once inside, I caught Regirock. In the island cave on Route 105, the braille says stop and wait for time to pass twice. If you leave this on the screen for 2 minutes, the door opens. In this cave, I caught Regice. Finally, in the ancient tomb on Route 120, the Braille tells you, with new time, hope and love, aim to the sky in the middle. Simply move to the middle of the cave and use fly, which opens the door. This allowed me to catch the final of the 3 Registeel, bringing the total to 141. Next was quite possibly the most infuriating Pokemon to catch in the entire game, Feebas. It can only be found on 6 tiles of water on Route 119. The tiles are completely random, and it has a 50% chance to be fished up on any of these tiles. As there's over 400 tiles of water on Route 119, this is a huge task. The most efficient way to find it is to simply fish each tile a couple of times to be sure it isn't there and move on to the next one. You should also use the old rod, as it only requires 1 A input to successfully fish up the Pokemon, which will save a load of time. I followed this process for multiple streams, fishing constantly for hours at a time, only to find hundreds of Magikarp and Tentacool. On my first try, I fished through the entirety of Route 119, but only once per tile, as I figured with 50% chance to find it, the odds would be in my favour and I'd save a load of time. I ended up being unlucky and didn't find it. In Dewford, there's a man which asks for a trendy phrase. When you give him a new one, for some reason it resets the 6 tiles Feebas can appear on. The phrase itself has no impact on which tiles it ends up being. I used it to reset the tiles and headed back. On my second run through, I committed to fishing twice per tile and got halfway through the route without finding Feebas. I figured there must be something I could try and did some searching online. I found a post on Reddit from the user Pika250, which suggested that the tiles Feebas would spawn on were more limited than it seemed. In this image, they marked the tiles with red numbers and said that the game would randomly select 6 of these tiles and would be re-randomized when changing the trendy phrase. Some users in the thread disputed the claim, saying that it was possible to find it in other tiles as well, but I decided to give it a shot as I was willing to try anything at this point. After fishing through most of the tiles on the image, I felt like it was no use, but after reaching the tile marked as 447 and fishing a few times, Feebas finally appeared before me. Even so, I can't say for sure if this was just a coincidence or if Pika250's claim was actually true. Personally, I'd just take it with a pinch of salt and try it out for yourself. Since it's possible to catch as many as you want once you find it, I made sure to catch a handful as the nature can make evolving it easier. The evolution method is also somewhat convoluted, as you have to raise its beauty stat to 170, then level it up. To raise its beauty, you need to make Pokeblocks that increase the beauty stat, which requires a healthy collection of berries. The berries are prioritized to make this as easy as possible with Kelpie and Hondu berries. As my cartridge had a dead battery, growing more wasn't an option, as that mechanic was tied to the in-game time. Fortunately, the game has enough berries to make it possible without growing more. This is where the Pokeblock case comes into play, as you can't make Pokeblocks without it. The best place to make them is in the Lilycove contest hall with the machine that has 3 people standing around it. Here I made as many Pokeblocks as I could from the Kelpie and Hondu berries and fed as many as I could to Feebas. As there's no numerical indicator for contest stats, I had to just guess based on the chart. Thankfully, I'd raised the beauty stat high enough, as when I used a rare candy on it, it evolved into Milotic. The next big challenge was catching Latias. As it can appear anywhere on the map, and its location changes when you enter a new area, I decided to follow this method. First, I made sure to have Wobbuffet with Shadow Tag in my party and stocked up on max repels. I then went to the building at the end of the bike path outside Slateport City. As Wobbuffet was lower level than Latias but higher level than the wild Pokemon in the grass, using max repel meant that only Latias would appear if it was in the area. By going in and out of the bike path building, Latias would change locations each time until eventually it would appear here. At first I kept trying to catch it with the Pokeball, but as finding it took a long time, after multiple failed attempts I gave in and used the Master Ball. This broke the rule I'd set for myself at the start, but for the sake of my sanity, it was worth it. From here on I still tried to use regular Pokeballs, but I wasn't as strict with it if it was a particularly frustrating encounter. While I was in the area, I was also quite lucky to catch a Minun that I'd missed earlier. Now felt like the perfect time to catch the strongest wild Pokemon in the game, Rayquaza. To get it, I had to travel to Skypillar, which is a short trip east of Pacific Log Town. Before heading over, I also made sure that I had the Mac bike instead of the Acro bike. The tower's full of cracked tiles which will break and cause you to fall through unless you ride over them at full speed on the Mac bike. After failing way too many times, I eventually made it to the top. Rayquaza was an incredibly challenging encounter for my comparatively weak team, but after a few tries paralysing it and bringing its health down as low as possible, I managed to catch it. Afterwards, I took the time to catch Bannock, Claydol and Altaria, bringing my total to 149. Next, I decided I'd get the Daycare exclusive Pokemon. As I already had Wynaut, that meant I only needed to get 3. At the Daycare on Route 117, you could put 2 Pokemon at a time in their care. If they share an egg group, after running around for long enough, an egg will be found by the man outside. If the Pokemon aren't compatible, the man outside will tell you they prefer to play with other Pokemon than each other. To get Igglybuff, I had to put Jigglypuff in with a Pokemon from the Fairy Egg group. For Pichu, I needed to put Pikachu in with a Pokemon from the Fairy or Field Egg group. Finally, for Azurill, I needed to put Marill in with a Pokemon from the Fairy or Water 1 Egg group. As all three are possible with a Pokemon from the Fairy Egg group, it's possible to use the same Pokemon for all three. After obtaining and hatching all three eggs, all that was left to do was finish off the long list of evolutions. The most complicated one was evolving Golbat. To evolve Golbat, it needs to have a happiness value of 220 or higher. The only way to check this is the happiness checker in Verdanturf Town. If the value is between 200 and 249, she says, "It seems to be very happy. It obviously likes you a whole lot." In order to raise its happiness level, I repeatedly took it through the Elite Four and fed it as many vitamins as I could. Eventually, it was happy enough, and after leveling it up, it evolved into Crobat. I also made sure to use a Moonstone on Jigglypuff to evolve it into Wigglytuff. The remainder of the evolutions all required leveling up, so I alternated between Skypillar and the Pokemon League. It took an incredibly long time, in the end evolving a total of 24 Pokemon and bringing my total to 178. With that, there were no more Pokemon I could obtain without starting another game. Even though I'd played through Pokemon Sapphire dozens of times in the past, this playthrough felt like the most in-depth I'd ever gone, exploring almost every corner of the map. As one of the most memorable games from my childhood, it was an incredible time visiting every location again, experiencing some truly nostalgic moments. It was also a massive relief that the game still held up, despite 2 decades of sequels that followed it. The adventure will continue in part 2, which will start with my playthrough of Pokemon Leaf Green. If you've enjoyed part 1, please consider leaving a like and subscribing. Thank you for watching. I hope you look forward to part 2.